Hello, listener. This is obviously Dan, and it's probably fairly obvious I'm not very well. Nor am I recording on my usual microphone because I don't want to get out of my sick bed. You might be expecting me to apologise that my voice isn't so great in this episode, but I'm not. What I'm going to apologise for is that the recording of my voice in this episode is not so great. When we recorded it, I did not have a cold like I have now, but there was something wrong with the signal on the microphone. This seems to happen whenever I'm recording with Stella for some reason. We'll have to get to the bottom of it. So my speech isn't very clear, unfortunately. Stella's is, and I hope you can still enjoy the episode, and we'll endeavour to make sure this doesn't happen again. Okay, have fun as we talk about the Cornetto Trilogy. Bye now.
Now the podcast starts.
Hello, dear listener. Welcome to the podcast in which we talk about horror, but sometimes we talk about other things and sometimes we swear. I am PD Velasquez, but as always, you can call me Dan. I have the great pleasure of being joined tonight by Dr. Stella Gaynor. Hello, Stella.
Hello.
You understand that I'm not editing that out. So
Yeah,
that was such a good entrance. How are you doing?
I'm actually all right.
Not as respiratorily
challenged.
For a moment.
Despite the choking, I don't know, choked on the air here. I think I'm actually fine.
Okay.
Don't know what happened there. Sorry.
We're all reassured. Excellent. So, this is a shorter than normal episode. So we're going to get straight into the topic today, which was a topic that's suggested by your good self, Stella. It's the Cornetto Trilogy, otherwise Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Edgar Wright, producer Nira Park, and have I missed anyone important? Those four people made
the big four.
Yeah, those four people made all these three films, which are 2004's Shaun of the Dead, 2007's Hot Fuzz, and 2013's The World's End, which which we've both seen all of multiple times. Apart from that, I've only seen The World's End once. And you know, they're very significant films, both for us personally and also, I think, what they did for the British film and TV industry. So.
Yes.
And yeah, this is a kind of horror adjacent episode because only one of the three films is strictly horror, I think.
Yeah. They're
all comedies. But nevertheless, all three do draw on horror in different interesting ways. So, if we start with the first film, it seems like a natural place to start. So, Shaun of the Dead. Well, actually, I'll just ask you, Sarah. So why was it that you become such a fan of these movies? Did one of them really work for you, and you just followed it, or was it because you already knew the people involved? What's the story?
What's going on? It was because I already knew the people involved from Spaced. So myself and all my housemates at uni in Sheffield, we watched Space as it aired on Friday nights way back then.
Yes. I can agree with that story in every detail, including in Sheffield. So,
in Sheffield, all of it. So we we loved it when the spaced episodes came out, and they did two seasons of it, whatever you want to call it.
This is our house. We've lived here for about a year. Our landlady lives upstairs. There's another guy that lives in the basement. And we sometimes have friends around and stuff.
But we're not a couple.
No. We just,
Get on.
And then when we discovered, a couple of year later or so, that Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright were going forward with Shaun of the Dead, which was based on, had its beginnings in episode 3 of Spaced, this episode called Art, where Brian goes and sees his old art partner Vulva's art exhibition.
Yes, Vulva, played by David Williams.
In
pre-Little Britain kind of mode. But,
And
so it's based between 1999 and 2001, I think.
Something like that, yeah. And Tim, who's Shaun, who Simon Pegg plays, Tim has been up all night because him and his friend some guys that gave him some cheap speed in the pub. So he's been up all night playing Resident Evil, so he's awake and he ends up sort of hallucinating zombies when he goes to watch the play. So Shaun of the Dead is loosely based on that, and both Pegg and Wright have spoken about at length, particularly Simon Pegg, about his deep love for horror. And at one point in the Spaced series, the character Tim, he comes outside. I think it's the episode where Amber leaves home. I know it all quite well. He's wearing a Dawn of the Dead t-shirt, so there's a Dawn of the Dead poster on the wall in the flat. So it's the long links back to Spaced. So I was thrilled that they were making a movie. They made Shaun of the Dead. I didn't know at the time it was going to be one of 3. And that just kind of passed me by, I think. And so it started with Spaced, and even really a little bit before that. Do you remember there was a really offbeat comedy? I think it was on BBC Two. It was only ran for one series. It was called Big Train.
Oh yes, I'm a huge fan of Big Train.
Yeah, Simon Pegg's in that, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I'd seen him even back then. So when was Big Train? I don't know, the late 90s, mid to late 90s?
Yeah, Big Train started when we were at college, and I finished when we were at university.
Right.
I think maybe there was 2 or 3 years in between the 2 series. And the second series has got a different cast.
Right.
A partially different cast.
Yeah. So Simon Pegg had been on my radar for a bit, and then Shaun of the Dead hit the cinemas. What about yourself? Well, you said the same.
Well, although I went back a little bit further with Pegg and Wright, because in the mid-late 90s, I watched both the comedy show Is It Bill Bailey, which was a BBC Scotland production, so it was quite a low-budget sketch show.
Yeah.
It was not really a sketch show. At least half of every episode was just Bill Bailey doing his stand-up acts. But then there would be cheap comedy sketches in between, some of which featured Simon Pegg.
Right.
And the whole thing was directed by Edgar Wright.
Right.
And you could tell, I mean, he must have been in his early 20s then, but even then you could tell that this guy was trying to do as much as he could cinematically with what he had. And then not long after that, there was an incarnation of Alexi Sale's sketch show series that he did every few years. And this one, which I think was called Alexi Sale's Merry-Go-Round, was directed by Edgar Wright. And it was just a slightly higher profile, slightly bigger budget than the Bill Bailey one. And again, you could see, I mean, the reason I watched all of these shows was they were funny, but I could just see, I enjoyed, I mean, I was like yourself, I was a media student and things like that, and I was enjoying the kind of visual style of them. So So he was stepping forward with everything, and then suddenly Spaced arrived, which was it was reuniting Pegg and Wright, but also it was Simon Pegg and Jessica Stevenson, as she was then, Jessica Hynes now. You know, obviously they had the vision, they played the main characters and wrote the script, but Edgar Wright was brought on and could do absolutely everything he wanted. I just remember so many jokes where, you know, they would cut in between two people talking about what happened and what really happened.
Yeah.
Kind of comic effect, and you know, a more standard director would just put between the two and have the juxtaposition work like that. But Edgar Wright would do like a whip pan with a kind of sound effect.
Nice.
You know, and which obviously he carries into all of his movies, pretty much all of them. So I mean, it took a while for Space to really work on me. I didn't watch it all properly until it came out on video, and then I kind of drank it in over and over again. I still think there's a scene in it where it's the episode where they go to raid like the animal research.
Oh yeah, to get Colin back.
Yeah, and like Simon Pegg is giving them a pep talk. They're all stood there in their combat gear or whatever, and there's a sort of house funk version of the Imperial March from Star Wars playing for no reason.
He gives them all code names, and he's like, "You're Leia, you're Chewie, whatever." And Twist is like, "Is Jabba the princess?" Yes.
Yes. That's great.
I think with Spaced, the reason all my friends loved it, so much of it was just us. That's just what we did, and yet we were at uni, or at least pretending to be, and like just the sitting around and dicking about and going clubbing and just doing stupid things and just sitting around all day on our asses doing absolutely nothing, talking nonsense, getting in tiny insignificant adventures. Although Space was ludicrous, it was a lot like just watching us on the telly, and I think because we were watching it at 18, 19 years old, and it just felt like it was made exactly for us. We were the absolute prime audience for it. Yeah. And I remember I tried to show it Ema a few years ago, because she'd seen Shaun of the Dead. She was like, "Right, you should watch Spaced." She's just like, "I don't get it." Right. So, you need to spend some time in a shitty flat where it stinks of fag smoke and there's like beer cans all over the floor. You need to do that first.
It's very specific in terms of its timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I love the shot where you see Simon Pegg praying beside the bed something, and he goes, "You know, I promise I will honour you for the rest of my life if you only give me this thing." And the camera pans up and he's praying to a poster of Buffy.
Buffy.
Yeah. And then there's the episode where Tim basically rants for 5 minutes about the Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like at the start. You weren't part of it. You don't know how important it was.
You are so blind. You so do not understand. You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you. This jumped up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you?
And it's a kid, isn't it, in the comic book shop.
Now, I don't care if you've saved up all your 50p's, okay? Take your pocket money and get out! What a prick.
Tim, can I have a word with you in my office?
Yes.
Oh, it's brilliant. And again, Bill Bailey turning up as the guy who runs.
Oh, his manager.
Yeah.
I'm assistant manager.
So I loved all that. And then when Shaun of the Dead came out,
yes,
it actually came out at the same time as the remake by Zack Snyder of Dawn of the Dead,
which is a good film.
It is a good film, but also it's just really lucky for Shaun of the Dead, I think, that was there, because it meant that everybody knew what the title meant.
Yeah, it had a link.
In fact, it was one of my best times ever at the cinema, was going to see it, because I saw both of those films in a double bill on a Sunday evening. Dawn of the Dead first, and then Shaun, which is the correct order.
Yes.
Because you get all the cliches in Dawn of the Dead, and then all the spoofs of them, or the subversions of them in Shaun. Me and my friend Finbar went to see it. Finbar had never seen the old Dawn of the Dead and really needed that kind of primer on the genre, but it really worked for him. And I still think, I've never watched the Dawn remake again, actually, but I did love it for what it was. But I still think that it was such a beautifully satisfying experience, because Dawn of the Dead worked so well on its own terms. But then Shaun of the Dead, as well as, although it took the mickey out of that, it also outdid it. You know, there's brilliant gore and tension and characterizations and things in Shaun of the Dead. And it's exultant.
Do you ever think that modern life is not for you? Do you do the same dead-end job every day? Is your love life dying on its feet?
To a wonderful mum.
Oh, have you ever felt that you're turning into a zombie? Maybe you're not alone.
Piss it.
Although no one official is prepared to comment, religious groups are calling it Judgment Day.
It is vital that you stay in your homes. Avoid all physical contact with the assailants.
So, what's the plan? Bash him in the head, that seems to work out. Why have we got to go to Lizzie? Because I love her. Alright, gay.
I totally loved it. And you know, although I didn't actually watch it again for years, I was incredibly excited that Hot Fuzz was then coming out. And for any listeners who haven't seen the films, we're not going to go into too much detail about them. Just go watch them.
Yeah.
But in case it's not clear, they're a trilogy of movies, but they're not connected narratively. It's just kind of thematically. So Hot Fuzz isn't a sequel to Shaun of the Dead or anything. It's just, another film by the same theme with kind of the same tone. So before we move on to Hot Fuzz, though, Stella, do you have a favourite moment or a favourite thing that's in Shaun of the Dead? How many times have you seen it?
Oh, I couldn't even begin to count. Right. So I saw it in the cinema. I got it on DVD as soon as I could, and then I watched it loads. And I did that thing where you watch something loads and then you kind of forget about it for a while. And then when my kid was old enough to watch it, I was like, right, watch this. And then now they've watched it over and over again as well. So it's gone back on repeat. So in fact, all three of the films are near enough on repeat in our house now, because Emma's just watching them over and over again. She loves all three. And my favourite bit, so two pieces of it that I particularly like. And so when Shaun of the Dead came out, it was definitely part of the zombie resurgence that we had in the early 2000s with 28 Days Later and the Dawn of the Dead remake, and Shaun of the Dead was definitely part of that, and Resident Evil and all that good stuff. And even though, and then The Walking Dead in the comic and then Walking Dead on TV just a handful of years later, with that sort of premise of man wakes up from coma that we had in 28 Days and in the Walking Dead comic, and then in the Walking Dead TV, with Shaun it's kind of the same. Like, he's waking up from the coma of his life, like he's so stupefied with the boredom of his life, and he's slapped out of it by the zombie apocalypse. And then it's just got lots, despite being screamingly funny, it does also have some genuinely tense sequences in it, where either Shaun knows what's going on or he doesn't.
Right, yeah.
And then just the last stand in the Winchester is fantastic, where he has to deal with his mum, and there's David's death when he gets pulled through the window. I think is particularly scary. He's like edging along the windows, and they're all telling him, "Get away from the window, David! Get away from the window!" And then he doesn't, and they pull him through the window. And it's, you know, it's, despite being very, very funny, it does have the moments in zombie films that can be quite tragic. It still does that. And it ticks all the zombie boxes. You've got somebody in your party who's bitten, and you have to deal with it, and it does all of those things, like you said, and subverting them and making you laugh.
Yeah,
really laugh.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely more to it if you know all the films it's referring to, like the wonderful gag. Shaun's mum in the movie, played by Penelope Wilton, is called Barbara. So when they make the plan to go and rescue her, Nick Frost gets to say into the phone, "We're coming to get you, Barbara." Obviously, a key line from the start of Night of the Living Dead in a totally different context, and things like that. So there will be more to it if you know that background. I think also, as we just discussed regarding space, it kind of helps if you're from our generation.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely a reflection of life in the early 2000s when you're in your 20s, kind of thing. But despite all that, having watched it again recently, I do think it just holds up as a marvellous romp. It's frightening, it's tense. It's really well characterized. I mean, I think the whole kind of love triangle with Shaun's ex-girlfriend.
So there's Shaun and his girlfriend, or they've split up at the start of the film pretty much, and then basically the rest of the film is Shaun getting her back, getting Liz back.
That wonderful actress Kate Ashfield, who is in not enough. I mean, she should be a huge star. But
yeah.
Like years after this, she will turn up. She did some really important kind of artistic work. I think, like before Shaun of the Dead, she was in one of the first productions of Sarah Kane's Blasted in London. But then she will turn up and she'll just be kind of a relatively small role in Midsomer Murders or something. I will see more of her. But anyway, yeah, there are just scenes which are about them being in the pub and how disinterested in her point of view Tim is.
Shaun.
Sorry. Yeah.
We might as well be Tim.
But yeah, all of the characters. Well, no, I think only the Hot Fuzz is Simon Pegg playing a strongly different type of character. I think thematically there's a line between Tim and Shaun, and then Gary in The World's End.
Gary King.
We'll obviously come to Gary King
in a bit.
Indeed. Yeah, so it worked as a kind of romantic comedy drama with a bittersweet edge.
A zombie rom-com, they said.
But then you've got the slowly approaching apocalypse. And my favourite thing about the movie is that incredible build-up. Where Shaun has just broken up with Kate Ashfield's character. What's her name?
Liz.
She's Liz.
Yeah.
And what is it? He's in the pub with Nick Frost, who gives him the big kind of pep talk.
You don't need Liz to have a good time.
Oh, I don't, man.
No, hey, look at me. Can I just say one more thing? I'm not going to say, there's plenty more fish in the sea. I'm not going to say if you love her, let her go. And I'm not going to bombard you with cliches. But what I will say is this. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. At that point, there is like the shape of a shambling zombie right behind him, coming
out the window.
The frosted glass.
Sorry, we're closed.
Pisshead.
And that whole the fact that obviously Shaun, in his stupor, doesn't really realise what's happened. But we know because we've seen. If you've seen the Romero movies and things, you recognise all the signs. But he just wanders around thinking it's a normal kind of.
He's hungover, isn't he? When they come out the pub and they're hammered and they come out the pub and they're singing Duran Duran's White Lines, there's a zombie coming down the road. What's wrong with him? He could have said bass or freeze.
Okay, so time's moving on, so let's keep on to Hot Fuzz.
Sergeant Nicholas Angel, expert in hand-to-hand combat, armed response, and high-speed pursuit. He was so good, they reassigned him.
Right. You've been making us all look bad.
Statistically, Sanford is the safest village in the country.
Now, this big city cop.
You ever fired 2 guns whilst jumping through the air?
No.
You ever fired 1 gun whilst jumping through the air?
No.
Must learn
Is it true that there is a place in a man's head that if you shoot it, it will blow up?
how to think small.
Morning, the swans escaped.
The swans escaped.
Can you describe it to me?
About 2 foot tall.
Yep.
Long, slender neck.
That's just gonna scare it.
But in a place where not much goes on, a whole lot is about to go down.
3 people have died in a week.
Accidents happen all the time. What makes you think it was murder?
There hasn't been a murder in 20 years. You're saying this wasn't an accident?
Have you ever wondered why the crime rate is so low, and yet the accident rate is so high?
I'm gonna bust this thing wide open.
From the guys who watched every action movie ever made and created Shaun of the Dead. When the heat is on,
Here come the fuzz.
you gotta call the Fuzz.
Gunfights, car chases.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Hot Fuzz.
So I'll just recount my journey to it. Again, I saw this at the cinema in an amazing double bill. Although the first film in this double bill was actually Casablanca.
What?
It was on re-release at the time and I'd never seen it. So me and our friends Ross and our friend Diane Shufflebottom, we went along to the cinema to watch Casablanca, which none of us had seen before, I think. And then watched Hot Fuzz afterwards. And Ross and I had just been working on a kind of comedy police movie, so we were particularly keen to see what they did with it. And I remember it. I like it more now. I remember feeling that the first half of the movie was even better than Shaun of the Dead because Nicholas Angel, the character played by Simon Pegg, was such a different kind of character.
Yeah.
And that's
So I'm just remembering all the lines. That's why I keep giggling.
Well, yeah, I don't blame you. And I worked for the police at the time.
You did, yeah.
So I kind of recognised. I was quite impressed by its fidelity to correct procedure and things. Like there's a line about why don't we call it a road traffic accident anymore? And he says because accident implies there's no one to blame, so we call it a road traffic
collision.
Yeah.
It's like when they're telling him that he has to leave. He has to leave. It's like, do I get any say in this? No.
Yeah. So that's the police operations, isn't it? At the start. Who are
you want me to get the chief inspector down here? You want me to call him and get down here?
And he gets that. Yeah, Nicholas Angel is the cop who's so amazing that he has to get a panel of incredible high-up coppers, including Bill Nighy, Martin Freeman, Steve Coogan, Rob Brydon, one of them.
Yeah.
They all kind of keep calling in superiors to come down.
They ask him the same question. Hi, Nicholas. How's the hand? Still a bit stiff.
And basically, they think he's such a good cop that he's embarrassing the force. He's making them all look bad, so they're going to transfer him to Wells in Somerset. Which,
Sanford, Gloucester.
Wells in Somerset is where it's filmed.
Yeah, Sanford, Gloucestershire.
Sanford in Gloucestershire.
That's what they say.
And I was thrilled with it as well because it kind of felt like something that I dreamt that might happen, and probably inspired by seeing Space when I was at university, and we were trying to make kind of low budget films and thinking how you could make more exciting films within the budget constraints of British cinema. I thought, why don't you just do a big cop comedy, like a movie of the detectives, where because it would have like a police plot, you could have a real huge conspiracy around it, which would just give you an excuse to invite in every great comedy actor currently available.
It's like a who's who, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what Hot Fuzz is.
It's so good.
Yeah, and then of course it kind of has a swing towards horror in it, and it has very strong echoes of The Wicker Man and The Omen, with the appearance of Edward Woodward and also Billy Whitelaw in a stunning little cameo as she's the lady on the checking desk at the place today.
Yeah, fascist.
Yes, hag.
Yes,
doing the crossword at the desk all the time. Yeah, and I remember feeling like the film lost me a bit when it goes all Michael Bay, because I'm not as into that stuff. I'm not as well versed and as affectionate towards what it was spoofing. Having said that, watching it again, it's still very funny. And
it's just
complete. And also,
I'm not even watching it, and I'm laughing.
It's got a great mystery plot. I think it's a very rare and a very precious thing. Is a comedy movie that has a really tight plot. And it really does. So that was me and Hot Fuzz. Let me just invite you to stop laughing for a minute, interrupt your mirth, and tell us about how you came to it.
Well, I saw it in the cinema, and I think for me, Hot Fuzz, I think, is where you really see the Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright team sort of hit its stride, because it's so slick. It's like you said, it's so tight, and yeah, it is hilarious. So I watched it because I'd enjoyed Shaun of the Dead. I knew that it was coming, and I'd heard that it was going to be a trilogy. And the only link, like I said, is that sort of like the cast, the crew, and the fact that at some point everybody gets a cornetto. The things I like about it is, of course, it's horror elements. Lots of the set piece deaths make it feel a bit slashery at times.
Yeah.
You've got the hooded killer, which is the NWA Neighborhood Watch Association. And so a couple of the deaths are particularly grisly. But I think for Hot Fuzz, it's just the script is just fantastic. It's line after line of absolute screaming laughter that, it's certainly in our house we endlessly quote and repeat to each other, and all three of us in this house would all agree that the funniest bit is when the first so Nicholas Angel started working at Sanford, and they go to the pub for their first pub lunch, and the two Andys are they're like CID detectives, aren't they? The two Andys, two detectives.
Oh yeah, never come downstairs. It's Paddy Considine.
Paddy Considine.
Who's the other one? One of us is pronouncing it right, but I'm not sure which one.
I love Paddy Considine. But they're talking about, they're saying like, there's more guns in the country, don't you, than there is in the city. He's like, everyone and their mums is packing round here. Oh yeah, like who? Farmers? Who else? Farmers' mums. So it's just so many good lines like that. Where the big showdown at the end when they're in Summerfield, the big showdown, and one of the Andys gets like this gun's firing everywhere, and the gun hits a load of Dolmio sauce, and his face is covered in the red sauce, and the other Andy's like, no, and he's like, it's all right, Andy, it's just bolognese. It's just so many good lines, and just so, and they're, it's a action movie, it's a thriller, it's a cop movie, it's a buddy movie, it's even got elements of slasher in it, and it's just it's just fantastically tight. If I was going to give it one teeny tiny criticism, it would be that it's probably a bit long. I think there's some of it they could have compressed. But that might just be because I've watched it endlessly. And yes, there's some bits that I feel are a bit more stretched out than they need to be, but it's fantastic. I love it.
I mean, the most recent time that I watched it, I didn't watch it all in one go. I watched it in chunks, and I think maybe it benefits from that.
Yeah, I think it's got quite clear acts to it, and I think maybe I've just sometimes found it a little bit long, but again, that could be down to the fact that I've seen it 150 times.
Right. But no, it's incredible, and it is shown every week on ITV2. So
yeah.
So you're probably not alone in seeing it 150 times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they're streaming at the moment, but they can be definitely found. All three of these movies probably, but certainly the first two are on like rotation.
Yeah.
On ITV 2, 3, and 4, I think. So keep an eye out. Yeah. I mean, on watching it again, I absolutely loved its death. The cast is just incredible.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Just the fact that they've got Olivia Colman in it, in a small role.
Yeah.
Because she was omnipresent comedy supporting character for a few years.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, that she later blossomed into Oscar-winning lead.
Yeah, she's now an Oscar winner, and well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great film. Favourite.
I loved her in Green Wing. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Really, that medical comedy.
I did watch it, but I'd forgotten she was in that.
Yeah, she plays one of the office admin staff. She's always pregnant in it.
Okay, right.
But yeah, Green Wing is worth a revisit if you've got now to do.
I've been meaning to do that for a while because I didn't watch all of it when it was on. I saw enough of it to realise that the cast was great. People like Stephen Mangan. Julian Wright, and Michelle Gomez and
Tamsin Greig.
Tamsin Greig again, who is also in. Oh yeah, we didn't mention that another reason that Shaun of the Dead, I loved it, was the sense of coming together of spaced with the other sitcom that defined my student years, which was Black Books.
Black Books.
So you've got Dylan Moran, Tamsin Greig turns up in Shaun of the Dead in the kind of duplicate survival party. I don't think Bill Bailey's in Shaun, is he? But I feel like
no. But he's in Hot Fuzz though, isn't he?
They make up for it in Hot Fuzz because he's in Hot Fuzz twice.
Yeah. Nobody tells me nothing.
That's awesome. Before we move on to the World's End, I just want to mention this year is the 15th anniversary of Hot Fuzz.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, Empire podcast, or Empire magazine, I guess, but it came out on the podcast. They organised an on-stage Q&A with Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright talking about Hot Fuzz specifically, and that came out on the podcast, and it's a great listen.
Oh, I'll check that out.
There are some fantastic stories in it that I'd love to repeat, but it would just be theft on my part. But they're on there, and I'll put the link in the show notes for this. World's End is the final part of the trilogy, although actually it was preceded by a movie called Paul, which was written by Nick Frost and Simon Pegg and starring them, but it was directed by an American, Greg. Oh no, I can't remember his surname. But anyway, I don't know quite the truth of it, but it felt like maybe they'd fallen out with Edgar Wright at that point.
I don't know. So on one of our most recent viewings of World's End, Owen said something along the lines of, because there's quite a big gap, isn't there, between Hot Fuzz and World's End?
Yeah.
That Simon Pegg had, had gone and done other things, but he'd also, and I don't know if this is true, so I'm going to preface this with allegedly, he'd gone on a bit of a I'm a star now, take all the drugs, sleep with all the women kind of thing, and his character in World's End, Gary King, who is also ex sort of addict. I'm not saying that Simon Pegg's an addict, and all this is allegedly. A bit of World's End is a little bit of an apology on Pegg's part, and you can see that in the character of Gary King. I've heard, I don't know how true that is, so all that is like maybe.
Okay, well, just before we go on to the World's End, then I just want to mention, so there is the movie Paul, which I've seen and quite enjoyed. Have you seen it?
Yeah, but maybe he'd fallen out with Wright, because maybe I think maybe Pegg was on a bit of a bender, perhaps. I think.
Well, I mean, Pegg does have a Hollywood career in the way that the others don't.
Yeah.
Or didn't at the time. I know Edgar Wright's kind of made more successful position over there now, and
you did Baby Driver? Was that Edgar Wright?
Baby Driver was Edgar Wright, and it was an American production, but he was also the original director of Marvel's Ant-Man, which he didn't have a good experience of, so he left that production. But Paul is quite enjoyable, not as good.
It's alright though.
It's not. It doesn't come out of the same Britpop milieu, so there aren't as many amazing things in it. But you do get like Sigourney Weaver turning up and things like that, which is a wonderful touch. And then I'll mention it now while we're talking about things that are not parts of the trilogy but are connected. Many years later, in 2020, there was the Amazon series Truth Seekers, which was written by Nick Frost, although Simon Pegg turns up in it. I've not watched it, but I just remember I saw the beginning of it and it looked good. And it's one of I think Malcolm McDowell plays Nick Frost's dad in it. The first time you see him, he's coming down the stairs on the stair lift. And the sight of Malcolm McDowell on a stair lift was one of the most inexplicably hilarious things I've ever seen. And I'd really like to watch that show, but obviously not many people did, and it only went for one season. But yeah, I don't believe Pegg's role is massive in it, but the fact that it was the two of them together again, I mean, how can you do more? But okay, let's talk about the World's End then.
And we're back, just like the Five Musketeers.
Three Musketeers, isn't it? Well, nobody knows how many there were, really, do they?
You know that the Three Musketeers is a fiction, right? Written by Alexander Dumas.
A lot of people are saying that about the Bible these days.
What, that it was written by Alexander Dumas?
Don't be daft, Steve. It was written by Jesus.
Are we there yet?
Let's do this!
They haven't seen each other in 20 years.
I'm free to do what I want.
But tonight, they're returning to their hometown to finish the ultimate pub crawl.
This is our chance to finally conquer the Golden Mile. 12 pubs, 12 pints.
And this time, they're going to make it to the last pub, the World's End.
Let's go! 'Cause I'm free.
Come on. What do you recommend?
Beer.
We'll have 5 of those, please. 4 of those, and a tap water.
What? Look who it is.
Wow, long time. Gary.
Willkommen. Bienvenue. Welcome.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? You come back and everything's sort of different.
I suggest you get on your way.
Welcome home, boys.
It's not us that's changed. It's the town.
What are you doing?
It's all right. I'm not trying to have sex with you. There's something I need to tell you right now. Unless you do want to have sex, in which case I'll tell you afterwards.
Tell me right now. What did he say, Sam? Newton Haven has been taken over by robots. Did you believe him?
From the creators of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, the only way to survive the night is to make it all the way to the World's End.
Where are the others?
They're blending in.
Hello, I am a robot. We're just 5 friends on a night out, having a good time.
The World's End.
We are going to get to the world's end if it kills us. Oh no! Doomsday.
I didn't see this movie at the time. I didn't see it until quite recently, so I guess you probably saw it before I did, Stella. So what was your...
I didn't see it at the time either. So what year was The World's End come out?
2013.
2013, yeah. I think I knew it had come out, but we didn't go and watch it, and I think for whatever reason, and then when it came around to it being available on streaming services or whatever, it took me a while to convince Owen to watch it, because I think he'd seen the trailer and been like, doesn't look as good. So it took us a while to get around to watching it. And I think we only watched it about 2 or 3 years ago, and as I'm sure you'll agree that the twist in it, you don't really see coming what happens.
Well, no, I mean it's hard. It would be a hard film to explain without giving too much away. I mean, and maybe that's why I didn't see it at the cinema, because
maybe the trailer wasn't.
It wasn't really obvious to me what it was.
Yeah.
Like with Shaun of the Dead, it's like it's a zombie movie, but a comedy.
Yeah.
With Hot Fuzz, it's a cop action movie, but a comedy, and it's set in Gloucester. Whereas with World's End, I was not really sure. I mean, in some ways, from the trailer, there are bits of it that look a bit like another zombie movie, but then in some ways it's more sci-fi, and it didn't seem to be any one thing. And now having seen the film, I think, in some ways it's kind of more general, because you could say it's like a comedy take on various kinds of sci-fi. It does have tropes from lots of different things in it, but also it's like a very specific patterning on invasion of the body snatchers, I think. The way aliens who look like humans, and you can tell that they're aliens because of the way they scream. Although in The World's End, they don't just make a weird noise, they also have a pulse of light comes out their mouth and eyes, which is very effective. But that's kind of the premise. Your elevator pitch would be something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but a comedy. But actually, that's not the movie. A more accurate elevator pitch would be it's a comedy about 4 friends who and how their lives have moved apart, and they try kind of failure to reconnect with lost youth and things.
Yeah.
But also, it's a sci-fi action movie with kung fu aliens and Pierce Brosnan.
Yes. What? And all of that is not clear in the trailer, is it? And I think that's probably what put Owen off, because it was that what is this selling to me? I don't know what I want to be watching. So that he didn't see anything in it that he wanted to watch, and it was me going, come on, it's the last of the Cornetto Trilogy. We have to at least see it once. So we've seen them all, and then we did, and we watched it, and it, when the credits rolled, we were both like, oh, that was really good, and we were surprised because it had taken us so long to get to it, which kind of showed how much we weren't bothered about it. But I think that's, like you said, the trailer couldn't tell you what it was, because when you see it, because it's a fight with them in the toilets, isn't it? When maybe the 3rd or 4th pub, they're on a pub crawl, and the 3rd or 4th pub, and Gary King is starting to, he's just being Gary King, and he ends up in a fight with a younger lad who is everything that he is not, young and with his future before him, whereas Gary King is approaching middle age with his future way behind him, and he ends up in an altercation with this young lad. And in the fight, it's clear that this lad is not human, because he smashes his head off on the side of a sink, doesn't it? And it's all blue inside and whatnot. And there's just no. And I've watched it many times since, and I can't see any signs, apart from like what the pub landlord doesn't know who they are, but that could just be because Gary King is perhaps an unforgettable character, even though he preferred to think otherwise. You think it's just part of Gary King's worldview that he thinks, he's Gary King, but actually no one gives a shit. And so the fact that the pub landlord doesn't recognise him is neither here nor there. And it's only in this fight in the toilet that it's like, oh my god, they're all robots.
Yeah. I mean, so it doesn't have that lovely build-up that Shaun of the Dead has,
No.
where you can see the signs, and you can, especially if you're familiar with the genre. But that's in a way because the script is weighted towards the character stuff.
Yeah.
And then the sci-fi thing just kind of gets wedged in.
Mm.
It is a really entertaining film, and actually, I think my favourite thing about it is how moving it is as a meditation on maturity. And I mean, I found it quite startling when I watched it. It's like, oh, I've grown up with this guy. These guys. I am as old now as Gary King is in this movie.
If they all look middle-aged, then fuck. So do we.
Yeah, okay. And
are we middle-aged?
Is this, are you asking? I describe myself as such, but you don't have to.
Hang on a minute. I'm just going to go and book a Botox appointment. Just give me a minute, and I'll be right back.
Maybe I think the phrase middle-aged Stella is based on the old adage of 70 years and 10 being your life expectancy. So if you're like 40, then you're in the middle. But people live longer than that now, don't we? We're probably not even there yet. We're millennials. Let's stick with that. Sounds better.
That just makes us sound like twats, though.
Yeah, there is that.
But yes, so like Gary King.
Exactly. Well, so you imagine that Gary King is kind of like an apology. That the role of Gary King was an apology from Pegg to Wright and the others in a way, and he is very brave.
Mm-hmm.
Gary is so much less likable and relatable. Well, no, he is relatable. Actually, that's what kind of hurts about it. He's relatable, but he's a twat at the same time. He's all our worst bits.
Yeah, put him one.
He's very. I mean, you've reached our age and you have a family and stuff in your own place. I'm still in the same bedroom I was when we met, more or less, living with my mum. So I feel a kinship with Gary King, apart from the alcoholism kind of thing. Also,
and the raging drug habits.
Yes, but knowing people who have those kind of problems, again, I think he's quite a recognisable portrait of that kind of person who's struggling with those demons, and ultimately the film does allow you to get on his side. He is
very brave.
Yeah.
He's a brave character, despite being a bit of a twat. Like I said, it does have some quite moving aspects to it. Particularly when Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's character do end up sort of like going to toe and verbally having it out with each other. With Gary King's, because he's quite stuck in, he's definitely stuck in the past. So it has a lot of nostalgia in it, and the feelings that you can see Gary King having and wanting to, redo the pub crawl and revisit the greatest night of his life. All those feelings of looking back and being like, oh, it was so good and it would never be that good again. I've definitely thought of things like that and remembered times of my life where I just think, oh, I just wish I could just go back and do that again. And so I found, there's a lot of Gary King that resonates.
Yeah.
But, we're at our age, early 40s, while lots of us have grown up in some respects, there's lots of parts of us that have not and don't want to, and do understand with Gary King. No, we do just want to do this, and we do bandy about the same stupid catchphrases that we said when we were younger, and there's so much of him that speaks to the millennial, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and it, that is even more powerful because of this movie is positioned at the end of that trilogy. So even though the characters have not gone through all the films, it feels like, as I said before, we've grown up with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite striking to see, like Martin Freeman and Paddy Considine. Considine?
I don't know.
Potato. I don't know. You know, they're now portrayed in this movie as kind of having settled down, and settled for a certain kind of life. Whereas in Hot Fuzz, they were both in that movie. You know, Freeman was a hot shot high up in the Met, and Considine was one of the CID guys full of swagger. And then you go back to Shaun of the Dead, and you were seeing Frost and Pegg being housemates.
Yeah.
And like kind of struggling with being kind of approaching their late 20s and having to grasp the idea of, yeah, we sort of should start growing up now. And it's the beginning of that journey, and it's really fun, and it's a really affecting portrait of that portrayal of that thing that we all have to go through at that point. So that was the beginning of them growing up, and this is kind of not to suggest that life ends at 40 or anything, but it kind of feels like the other end of that scale, even though, and I don't want to spoil this for people who've not seen the film, but like the very end of the world end is a kind of a new beginning, which suggests, as among the many things that it suggests, because it's an extraordinary ending, as we were discussing off mic. You know, it does kind of show that you have that capacity within you to do new things, even you know, when you feel like you've gone down a certain path.
Absolutely. And the film closes with Citizens of Mercy, This Corrosion, which is fantastic.
Oh,
that final song at the end. I love it.
Yeah, okay. Nice one. Right, well then, I think we've had a good chat about the Cornetto Trilogy, or as I only learned today because of Wikipedia, it's actually, its full name is the Three Flavors Cornetto Trilogy.
All right.
Obviously, a play on the Three Colours trilogy by Krzysztof Kieslowski. I don't see those films either.
Me neither, I'm too stupid.
Yes, I'm just, okay, it's middle age, I'm just too old.
Just too old. I'm starting to use that excuse more and more for lots and lots of things. So, look at that being like, too old for that. What do you mean, tidying up after yourself? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's not just me there.
No.
I wish they'd make even more of these movies.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think they could go forward, create new characters, but still commenting on those ages and that time of life, you know. And also taking the mickey out of more genres. There are more genres out there that they could lean towards.
Of course. Yeah, so if you're listening, can you make some more?
Yes, I'm positive they are listening.
Yeah, big fans.
What better if they got to listen to our podcast? Stella, this has been wonderful fun. Listeners, if you haven't seen the movies, I hope that this was still an enjoyable chat and not completely incomprehensible. And it made
Sorry.
you want to watch them. Right, thank you so much, Stella.
Thanks, Dan.
We've done it. We've done the Cornetto Trilogy.
Yay!
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Stella Gaynor and T.D. Velasquez. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. or visit our Facebook pages at AndNowPod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/AndNowPodcast. And now the podcast stops.